Okay, so I'm just taking a walk in the forest, and I had a feeling to start recording on the topic of terror. Not a topic that gets spoken about very often in personal terms. Maybe we hear about it in more sort of global terms as terrorism. But actually, I'm going to speak about terror, about a very personal terror that I believe some, most, even all of us have in our systems. And for many of us it can be really deeply unconscious. And if it's unconscious, it means that we can't quite get to it. We can't quite access it. But there's something inside us that knows it's there. And more importantly, knows that there's a deep fear of that terror getting triggered. So many years ago, when my own terror got triggered, it felt so overwhelming and all-encompassing that it sent me into a really dark and terrifying place in myself, and to the point where I was really considering taking my own life. And this was over 20 years ago, and it was actually through the grace of God when I had my first spiritual awakening, where something came through me which could be with the terror, could be with the fear and all the feelings that were getting triggered in me. And I've noticed that over the years, even though I have access to quite a profound and deep spirituality, I noticed that terror still lived inside me. And that actually a lot of my actions and my behaviors were somehow being decided by not wanting to trigger this terror. So what I mean by that is my interactions with other people, the things that I shared publicly, certainly my intimate relationships, were either triggering the terror, or there was a fear of triggering the terror. And it wasn't until I started to do some work with somebody who, I think I'll just remain, that person can remain anonymous for now. But I started doing some work around building a relationship with that part of myself, and almost treating it like an entity in and of itself that needs to be engaged with, and that needs to be met and received and understood, so that what it is holding can be digested and understood and moved through. So this is the journey that I've been on actually for the last few years. And it's an interesting one, because the promise of spiritual awakening is not that we're going to have to face our terror, but it's that we're going to be free of our terror. We're going to be free of any challenging feelings. And yet in my own experience, it has not been like that. And it has been more like the spiritual ground has given me a stable place in which to explore the terror, the existential terror that I think many of us hold. So if you can't feel this terror in yourself directly, then it may be manifesting as certain protective behaviors that mean that you don't get in touch with it. So that could be something around your relationships, never wanting to be in conflict with anybody, never challenging status quo, maybe people pleasing, maybe approval seeking, some sort of codependent way of relating with others. Because if you relate in a codependent way with others, then it's unlikely that you're gonna have to face that deep terror in yourself, because nothing is getting challenged. So the behaviors are secondary conditions for avoiding the primal terror. And one of the things that I've learned over the last few years is that we really have to respect those secondary conditions. We really have to protect, we really have to respect the things that have been protecting us from feeling the terror and the fear of possibly being deeply overwhelmed by the terror. So these protectors, we could call them protectors. That's one of the languages that models like IFS use, I believe. These protectors need to be acknowledged for the role they've played. They need to be acknowledged for the fact that they've done their best to keep us safe. They need to be acknowledged for not putting us in dangerous positions where there is a chance that we would be deeply, deeply overwhelmed. So that in that way we begin to make friends with our system rather than shaming ourselves or beating ourselves up or making ourselves wrong for being codependent. And as we begin to make friends with those protective parts of ourselves, it's like they can relax a little bit more and be a little bit more willing to trust who we are at our core. And the more we're able to trust who we are at our core, the more we'll be able to access our terror. So in some ways, this whole journey of healing is quite counterintuitive. Sometimes when we come into the path of healing, we might think it will be a progressive path of, I slowly begin to feel better and better and better. But actually, it might not look like that at all. It might look and feel like for a while you begin to feel worse, actually. And this is why so few people really want to go down this route, because most people, they just want to feel better, understandably. But we can't feel better truly until we've accessed the pain that's at the core of our existence. We can't feel better until we've accessed and digested the terror that's at the core of our existence. So yeah, it's a deep calling to willingly and consciously face our terror. I mean, it's not it's not what most people do at weekends, is it? Imagine going into the office and saying, "How was your weekend, Elizabeth?" "Oh, I spent my time facing my existential terror. How about you?" It's not something that is likely to happen in the context of a normal environment, quote unquote normal environment. So when we share these things, when we talk about these things, it's also really important to do so with people who understand what we're undertaking. It's really important to have conscious support, conscious community, conscious friends who understand that actually what we're doing in facing all parts of ourselves and integrating them back into the whole, what we're doing is maybe one of the greatest things that anybody can do, without giving that to the ego and saying I'm doing a great thing. I don't mean it in that way, but I mean it in the way of it's a great thing because it's something that very few people do. I remember speaking to a really good friend of mine not that long ago, actually a family member, and they were reading my book and they were saying, I read your book a little bit every evening, but to be honest with you, I don't really want to go that deep into myself. And I respect that and I understand that, because there's I think for many people there's a deep fear that if we go deeply into ourselves, like what the hell are we going to find? And are we going to be able to deal with it? And yet for many of us, that facing of oneself, that integrating of oneself, for many of us that feels like that is what our life is about. It's like everything else is honoured. We can honour our job and our practical living circumstances. We honour all of that. But at the core of it, we feel that there is something inside us that we want to resolve in this lifetime. The existential conflicts or challenges of being both deeply human and deeply divine, both of these things. For me, this has been the most important thing that I've felt like I wanted to resolve in this lifetime. And maybe if you're listening to this, then maybe that is something that really speaks to something deep within you as well. So thank you for listening to this short talk on terror. And I'm really facing and embracing the human condition.